All right, it's now 25 minutes to 7 o'clock, and welcome back. In case you're joining us, welcome aboard. It's time for us to look what's making headlines on the dailies. I'll start by, first of all, introducing the panel that we have to look through the dailies, but also the panel that will carry on to discuss matters on political point. And I'll start on my immediate left, where we have Senator Paul Njoroge. Thank you for joining us. We're also joined by Honorable Didmus Baraza, who's a member of parliament for Kimilili. And last but not least, Steve Ogutu, who's a governance consultant. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning. We'll start with the newspaper review, and as usual, we start off with the Standard, where the headline is Old Giants Scoop Top KCPE Stars. And this is to do with the Form 1 selection, where we have KCPE students that did very, very well, and they have now been taken up into the schools. And Old Giants here, meaning some of the schools that have been well known for capturing some of the best students, and they have maintained their reputation as some of the best secondary schools. I'll start with you, Senator Njoroge, with, first of all, maybe a very positive note, given that we were used to having students have their positions mentioned in January. But here we have a difference. By the time they go to Christmas, they already know which schools they're going to, which is a positive move, I believe.
Yeah, I think that is a good move, and also showing some efficiency in coming up with the result of the KCPE.
In good time.
Sorry?
You have got the results in good time.
In good time than it used to be. I think with that kind of mood, when we are approaching Christmas, that will really do us good. And at the same time, giving parents ample time to prepare themselves as they work towards taking their children to Form 1.
To Form 1.
So by the time they will be celebrating Christmas, at least they will have planned themselves on what to save to pay for whatever.
At least they know which schools their children are going to, and they need.
Also what uniform they're supposed to buy. And those who are paying school fees to not to use all the money during
over Christmas with the festive season, which we're just about to get into. Yeah. All right, Honorable Didmus Baraza, a good move there, of course, by the Ministry of Education. However, there's also questions that linger as to how we're going to upgrade some of the other schools. We seem to be having the same schools doing very well, the likes of Alliance, Pangani, to mention a few. But what happens to other schools that possibly standards should be raised, given that we have over 1 million students that need to get into these schools?
Yeah, there are several factors that comes into play. Students being taken to schools where the schools whose previous performance matches the marks that they got to enhance competitiveness. I know we have some bit of a challenge. We have schools that were upgraded to national schools, but the performance have not been better than even county schools. So those schools are still struggling to come up. And I think the focus by the Ministry of Education is on those schools to be able to bring them up to the level that are required of a national school.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we are hoping that that's going to be done. Ogutu, your thoughts on, of course, a better, more efficient education ministry that is ensuring that students are ready. They know which schools they're going to be going to come January. And that, of course, helps in planning. January, for many years, for many parents, has been a nightmare, because you go spend all your money over the festive season. Come January, you begin to scrounge around to find where your children are going to go to school.
Definitely. I mean, it's a good move. Now parents are able to plan accordingly and not just spend all they have for Christmas and for during this festive season. But I also wanted to add to what Mheshimiwa said.
My apologies, I'll have to cut you short. I think there's a problem with the mic there, but we'll come back to you. But maybe still on sticking on matters education, on page 8 of the Standard, we also have another story. Another teacher strike, NAT issues 22-day notice. Now, this is something, Honorable Baraza, we have had for long. Time immemorial. And it seems to always, almost come up at the same time. Another teacher strike. They've issued a notice of 22 days, and what their bone of contention is centralized procurement of course books, stop teachers delocalization for head teachers, and also for head teachers to be allowed into unions.
think we must have a candid discussion about this matter. It is clear from where I sit that the government wants to kill the Kenya National Union of Teachers. You saw what they were doing to Sosyon. And I think we should come together as a country with the institutions to be able to do things that will take this country forward. These issues of fighting supremacy battles, who is senior, who is not, is not possible. I think we should, Teacher Service Commission should engage Kenya National Union of Teachers within the auspice of the law, within the auspice of their mandate, within the auspice of the collective bargaining agreement, and that what they're able to agree, let them agree. What they are unable to agree, let them go to an industrial court for direction, and whatever direction the court will give, let them abide by, because, at the end of the day, it's our children who will suffer.
Who suffer, absolutely. And the question might be, are strikes the best way to resolve? That seems to be always the resolve for NAT, but at the end of the day, it's not the government per se that suffers much, or the teachers, it's the student.
It's not about whether the strike is the best option, but it's provided within the law. There is a framework under which any union can call for a strike. There's a process, and I think if they have exhausted all those avenues without bearing any fruits, they want to go on strike. I mean, as a member of parliament, I feel our children will suffer, but we are used to a government where. And not until you stage some kind of a go-slow, an industrial strike, is where they will be able to sit down with you and agree. But it's my hope and desire that Parliament should wedge into this matter, so that this matter is solved once and for all.
Once and for all. Senator, what are your thoughts on how important government thinks of our children when we have so many resolved things that end up in strikes? Because at the end of the day, that should tell us the heart of government.
Yeah, what I think is that now between the union and the TSC, they really need to resolve this matter. Because I think the grievances which are there, they can really be handled easily without interfering with the children's learning. But also I would advise the heads of the union to be cautious when they're really coming up with these strikes, because they really do affect the result, the outcome of the examination towards the end of the year, because the curriculum is interfered with.
Correct.
So I don't see why Sosyon and his team would really go that route, and especially interfering with this mood of Christmas. I think they really need to give...
Well, one might argue and say that their back is against the wall. They've tried to give government time to negotiate and have this done. However, government has not been responding positively to their demands. Therefore, they're left with no choice. Like Honorable Didmus Baraza says, it's within their constitutional right to strike.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying both the government and also the union, they really need to come up with a framework whereby they need to resolve these matters before they get out of hand. Because the people, the one who ends up suffering is the students, the learner, whereby I don't think that is fair at all. Also, I think this school of thought whereby the government usually comes in at the last minute when things are too bad. I don't think that really is a good way of handling these matters. They really need to move fast and handle these things before all these nasty things.
Before it gets to that level.
Yeah.
All right, Ogutu, your thoughts on the perennial interference of the education of the children by virtue of the fact that there seems to never be a conclusive agreement between NAT and government.
And I think that's really wrong. I think it's not really a new matter. We've seen this happening year in, year out. And I think the approach that TSC and the Ministry of Education uses of bulldozing what they want as opposed to having a dialogue with the union, I think it's not a good idea. I think for them to have an amicable solution to this, I think there's a need for them to put their egos aside and just decide to tackle some of these issues that are being raised by the union. Because, like you've correctly said, those who suffer are the children of this country, which is not really a good thing, because they are paying to get service from their teachers, and in most cases, when the teachers are on strike, the curriculum delivery is delayed, and it affects the overall performance, at the end of it all.
Okay. Honorable Baraza, is this something that maybe Parliament should pick up and see whether they can help resolve by virtue of the fact that it is an issue that seems to be recurring every single time? So there seems to be no reasonable result that comes out of the negotiations they have.
Yes, because TSC as an independent constitution commission, it's answerable to Kenyans through Parliament. And I think going forward as a country, we need to really look at this performance contracting. To me, the performance of the commissioners and the secretariat should also include on how they manage their stakeholders, how they have stabilized the strikes in the schools, how they have negotiated their CBAs, how they have implemented it. It's a whole package. I mean, so that. If they are unable to stabilize the education sector, they should be shown the door, and other Kenyans should be able to come in and take that thing forward. But I also really want to ask some other ministry officials from Jogo Road, from Jogo House, that they should not begin to meddle into the running of the Teacher Service Commission. Let the Teacher Service Commission make their own independent decisions that are important in improving the education standards of this country going forward. And I think now that they are unable to agree, I think Parliament, through the Departmental Committee on Education and Research, should be able to come in and provide a way forward. Because at the end of the day, all commissioners are answerable to Kenyans through Parliament. Yes.
All right. And maybe let's look at another story on page 9 of the Standard, and not very good news for Nairobi residents, particularly those of you who drive into the CBD. Starting tomorrow, your parking fees, if you're in the CBD, is going to be double, from 200 to 400 shillings. But what the council has done, and this is following an amendment made by the County Assembly in 2019 Finance Act to enable the county to rake in more revenue, is that they have put the parking zones into different categories. There's zone 1, zone 2, and zone 3. Zone 1, which is the CBD, is going to be 400 shillings for you to park. Zone 2 is going to be 200, and zone 3 is going to be 100. Let me start with you, Ogutu. Is this a good move by the county government? They, of course, have to raise revenue, but, of course, the question is whether this is the right time to do that.
I think it's definitely not a good move. I mean, Kenyans are being taxed left, right, and center, and I just think it's not a good move. especially given that. It's coming at a point when Kenyans are experiencing very hard times. The economy is not doing so well, and I think the idea of doubling the parking fee from 200 to 400 is really not a good idea.
It's not something that's going to go down well with.
That's right. I'm sure Kenyans Nairobians are really going to react to that. Vigorously. Okay. They're not going to take it so kindly.
Okay. Yeah. Senator, one might argue and say there's never really a right time, especially for a price hike, so they'll have to do it at one time or the other. But the question is, it seems very, we had a time where during page 9 of the Standard is where we're at, we had a time where Kidero raised the fees, then it came down again. There just seems to be no planning that is behind this raising of fees. And of course, one then is left with the question, what do they need that extra money for? What are they going to use it for? Is it necessary?
Yeah, I think it might be necessary, depending with the plan they have as far as generating income is concerned. Remember, we are talking of a class of people who owns vehicles. Remember, you have matatus. If one cannot afford to pay this fee, you always have an alternative. Use matatu. Because I think maybe the county government of Nairobi, they thought the easiest way of getting this money, rather than going to the common mwananchi down there, they would really get it from...
One would agree with that argument if we had an efficient public transport system. But unfortunately, look at the rains that we have right now. How many people would be willing to get into a matatu if they can afford a car? With the current state it is, you may be stepped upon. I mean, by the time if we had an efficient public transport system, then that's a valid argument.
Yeah, but also I would say, you know, we have that congestion of vehicles in town, such that if we all come out with the vehicles we have, I think there would be no room for those vehicles. So to me, I think this would reduce the number of the vehicle, giving it much room for enough parking for those people who are able. Those who are not able, I mean...
use other alternatives.
We use other alternatives. That's what I would say.
Didmus Baraza, your thoughts on this? And given that we operate in a city, let me say, that is not friendly to alternatives. And the reason why I say that is, one, our public transport system is one that's not efficient. Let's take cycling, for example. I've tried cycling. We don't have cycling lanes. There are many people who would be willing to cycle. It's healthier, it'll decongest, but there is nowhere to cycle. It's unsafe to cycle, so you're left with no alternative but to use your car. Honorable Baraza.
One, I think the county governments have, the law allows them to venture into alternative revenue raising mechanism, taxation being one of it. And myself, I have no problem with the increase of parking fees, but I will only have a problem if that revenue that is collected is not being put into meaningful use. I mean, we will only complain if we are looking at the amount of money that is being collected vis-a-vis the services that we are getting as residents of this city, because driving is luxury. And I think I've been always on the forefront saying, let us increase taxation on luxury, things which if you don't have, you cannot die. But,
and one of those being parking in town.
So that we save the common mwananchi, the hawker.
But what about looking at the infrastructure that would help us get to that point? There's no problem. I mean, there are cities, for instance, in London, you would pay more fees to get into the central business district, but there are alternatives. You have the tube system, which is the underground train system. You have cycling lanes. You have an efficient public transport system if it's the bus, but we don't have that infrastructure currently.
You know, the problem we have in this city is we don't have a proper plan, and if we have a plan, you find some people resisting. You know, there are so many cars in town that are idling on the road. They create traffic jams. Even, you see even during the rains. I'm sure in London there is some specific cars that will not be allowed to access CBD.
That's true.
We have cars which, for them to start, they have to jump started, you have to push them. You can imagine if, we have a lot of cars breaking down. And you see even our system of car inspection is not proper. In UK, in these advanced countries, their inspection is called, there is a term that they use. Every year you have to take your car for a full mechanical test. And if it fails, the car is ordered, it's deregistered. But in Kenya, you go to the NTSA, look at their records, let them show you how many cars they have deregistered being mechanically sound. It's nobody. You will find a car that was being driven in 1960. As long as it's moving, it's still on road and it has an NTSA sticker. So that one also contributes to the traffic mess that we have in this country. Okay. We have even matatus that are completely unroadworthy. But we'll find them struggling to find their way into the CBD. They break down the CBD. They have to be,
They put people's lives at risk as well.
Absolutely.
By virtue of the fact that
so that is the problem which we are having. And if we sort out that problem, we will not have the issues of traffic with the emergence of app that will support taxi, like this Uber, like Taxify. Is actually better. It's good you can have these cars outside CBD at a particular place, so that they only come to CBD if they are coming to pick someone.
If they
pick
business.
someone and they exit.
Okay.
But
All right, let's wait and see how Kenyans are going to react to that. But as usual, we are not likely to see much of a reaction. But there you go, 400 shillings if you're driving into the CBD starting tomorrow. So please beware that that's a price change. And those of you who are going in the Westlands area, it's 200 shillings. And other areas, which is categorized as Zone 3, it's 100 shillings. Let's look at the Daily Nation before we wind up. And the top story is Spain as top student miss dream schools. This is a subject that we've already sort of talked about, and that is to do with the selection of KCPE examination candidates and the schools that they're going to be reporting to come January. They've already been placed, but one of the issues, of course, that came out is that some of them had not selected 11 schools as required and were only selecting 2 or 3, which the CS for Education, Magoha, has termed as suicide. And that's because if you do not get chosen to the school that you wanted to go to, then you are left with no choice but to be placed by the ministry. But there you go. That's the top page story on the Daily Nation. Pain as top students miss dream schools. But let's look at other stories on page 3. As we get into the festive season, there's a story there. Alcohol blow comes to ignominious end as police bosses fight over bribe cash. Now, this is a classic case of a good idea that is going to be disregarded and completely thrown out simply because we cannot tame corruption. I'll start with you, Ogutu, and the story here is that after senior police officers at Vigilance House went into undercover investigations, they found out that Alcoblow, as much as it's there to try and ensure that we have safety on the roads, especially as we get into the festive season, was being mishandled and misused by police officers because it was more of a cash cow. They were receiving money as opposed to doing what is right. So it has been decided that they will withdraw the gadget.
Yeah, most definitely. I think and this has been going on over time, you know, especially on Fridays when you're driving home, you see them arresting motorists and you know, taking money from them, you know, and this money, by the way, we don't even know, we don't even get to know what they do with
the money that they collect.
The money that they collect. Mm-hmm. I think which is very illegal. Mm. Yeah, so I think and the police has been, you know, I think there's need to have a very systematic approach in terms of addressing corruption, which has been a systemic issue in the police service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Senator, apparently there's over 2 million shillings made in a night after extorting drunk drivers. Ridiculous, the amount of money that some of these guys make out of something that's meant to really be keeping us, the public, safer.
Yeah, I think something went amiss when we were coming up with a police reformist. Mm-hmm. Because I think those changes which were done during that time, they were really supposed to deal with how to handle these police criminals who man our roads. Mm-hmm. Remember, this has actually been like a song, yeah, for many years. Whenever we hear about police extorting money from members of the public or from the motorists, this just goes that way for about a week, and then
we're back to business as usual.
Back to business as usual. Mm. But I'll tell you, it is this system of having senior police officers, and especially the commandants, who have come all the way from grassroots. You know, they know this is to them it's a norm, and they don't seem to care much, because after all, some of them have enriched themselves through that route. And remember, some of them also gives condition to their juniors whenever they release them to go and
come back with this amount.
To come back with some amount. So it is like they are right. What they fear is the media guys and, of course, the EACC. But you see also EACC sometimes does this for public relation.
Okay, for PR purposes. Honorable Baraza, your thoughts on this? I mean, it is unfortunate that something that would be of a good idea to ensure that those who must drink find alternative ways other than driving home and putting others at risk. We've lost so many lives because of drunk drivers. But because the police cannot tame their appetite for, making this a cash cow, we have to do away with it.
First is ridiculous. It's laughable. It's very regrettable that the government can suspend a very good gesture to ensure Kenyans are safe. But the reason they are giving is because the police are misusing that particular exercise to enrich themselves. When we have so many avenues of mitigating against the graft and those who extort money. I would want to see a scenario similar to what happens in Uganda. In Uganda, all traffic fines are known by all the Ugandan people, by all people. So, for example, when you are caught over speeding, you are given a voucher that indicates the amount of money you are supposed to pay. So what you do is that you will go, use mobile money, you pay, you show them an equivalent of an M-Pesa number on how you have paid. Police will record the receipt and give you a car and you leave. But in Kenya, they will hold you on the road for 3 hours. For 3 hours. So what we should do is that we should also reintroduce cashless systems for all these traffic fines, where when you are driving at night and you are arrested driving under the influence of alcohol, you are told the fine is 5,000 shillings. And then after paying that fine, whether by M-Pesa to a pay bill number that the government will so establish, then you are told we can't give you a car. You will come pick it tomorrow when you are sober, or you provide an alternative driver to drive you home. So that is how things should be done. But the police will put you on road. When you are put in the cold for 2 hours, that will make you begin to negotiate your freedom, how much you want me to give you, because even if you want the money to pay the fine, there is no, you can't pay. They have to take you to court before you agree to pay that amount of money. So this is something which, as a member of parliament, as a member of the Security Committee of the National Assembly, I am willing to take it forward. That yes, we have had a reduction of accidents since the introduction of this alcohol law, but we just need to fine-tune it in terms of shielding Kenyans from being extorted. Kenyans must be aware of even the alcohol level. Once the machine detects that you have taken some alcohol, you don't know what are the levels. Whether the levels
could be an agreed or legal limit. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I know we have a certain level of alcohol where you can still drive and reach home. So they'll have to look at the number of things. Where's your home? If you are going a kilometer further, those are things which we can mitigate.
We can mitigate, but unfortunately, it looks like we are not able to do that so far, despite what has been happening. Well, that's where we wind up our newspaper review this morning. But do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it's time for Political Point, and we're going to be looking at what has been happening. Of course, on the political scene, the BBI has been discussed left, right, and center, and it seems to have some who are attacked more than others. That's going to be a subject of discussion. A quick reminder of our question: do you agree that the CS for Interior Security, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, is involved in partisan politics as alleged by a section of Ruto's allies? Do you agree that, or do you think that Matiang'i is involved in partisan politics as alleged by a section of Ruto's allies? We're going to start off from that on Political Point, but for now, we take that break. We'll be right back. Do stay with us right here on Morning Express.